The lights in the war room were dim and cold. Around the big table sat creatures from all corners of the galaxy. They had come from distant worlds to talk about one thing that scared them all. The thing they called the Shadow Maw. Admiral Kethvar pressed a button on the table. The air above them shimmered and then showed a picture that made everyone go quiet. The creature in the picture was huge beyond belief. It stood as tall as a building with scales that looked like broken glass and eyes that burned like small suns. Its body seemed to be made of living crystal and flowing fire at the same time. The beast moved in the picture with deadly grace. Every step it took made the ground shake. Its head was the size of a small ship, and its teeth could cut through the strongest metal in the galaxy. When it opened its mouth, energy poured out like liquid lightning. This creature has been our greatest
enemy for 3 years now, Admiral Kethvar said. His voice was heavy with sadness and fear.
We have lost more ships and lives trying to deal with this beast than in any war we have ever fought. Commander Jake Morrison sat at the far end of the table. He was the only human in the room full of aliens. His brown hair was starting to turn gray at the edges, and his blue eyes were tired from years of fighting in space wars. Jake had grown up on a farm in Montana where his family raised cattle and horses. He knew about animals in ways that most space soldiers did not. "Tell us what happened with the Korthan Empire," General Vorthak said. His bug-like face clicked as he spoke. His people were known for being the best at training wild beasts in the galaxy. Admiral Kethvar nodded and changed the picture. Now, it showed a group of Korthan beastmasters approaching the creature. The Korthans were tall and covered in thick fur. They carried long sticks that could control the minds of animals. They had never failed to tame a creature before. The Korthan team had 12 of their finest beastmasters, the Admiral said. They used their strongest mind control tools. They tried to speak to the creature in over 50 different animal languages. The Shadow Maw looked at them for exactly 3 minutes. The picture showed what happened next. The creature opened its mouth and pure energy came out. The beam was so bright it hurt to look at. When the light faded, there was nothing left of the Korthan team but ash and melted metal. "What about the Nexari?" asked another alien from across the table. The Nexari were known for being able to read minds and speak without words. The Nexari tried to connect with the creature's thoughts, Admiral Kethvar said. They sent their best mind readers. 5 of them working together tried to touch the beast's mind. Another picture appeared. It showed 5 Nexari with their large heads and big eyes sitting in a circle. They were trying to use their mental powers on the Shadow Maw, but something went wrong. The creature's eyes began to glow brighter, and the Nexari started screaming. 2 of them died on the spot. The other 3 lost their minds and never spoke again. Even the Valdorians failed, the Admiral continued. They once tamed the great star dragons that live in the center of our galaxy. They brought their entire fleet to face the Shadow Maw. Jake had heard about the Valdorians. They were an old race that had been taming dangerous space creatures for thousands of years. If they could not handle this beast, then it was truly something special. The picture now showed the Valdorian fleet, huge ships that looked like they were made of gold and silver. The Valdorians themselves were tall and thin with skin that glowed like starlight. They had brought cages big enough to hold moons and weapons that could put any creature to sleep. The Shadow Maw destroyed half their fleet in the first attack, Admiral Kethvar said. The Valdorians retreated and declared the creature to be beyond the power of any being to control. Jake studied the pictures of the creature more carefully. Something about the way it moved reminded him of animals he had known back home. When he was a boy, his grandfather had taught him how to work with horses and cattle. Some animals were mean because they were hurt. Others were scared because they did not understand what people wanted from them. "Where did this creature come from?" Jake asked. "We found it in the Kepler Nebula," Admiral Kethvar replied. "It seems to be guarding some old ruins there. The ruins are very old, maybe older than any of our civilizations. Every time we try to study the ruins, the creature attacks." Jake nodded slowly. "So it might be protecting something important to it." General Vorthak made a clicking sound that meant he was annoyed. "Commander Morrison, this is not some farm animal that got scared. This creature has killed thousands of our people. It has destroyed entire fleets. It cannot be reasoned with or controlled." Maybe, Jake said quietly. But back on Earth, my grandfather always said that every animal, no matter how wild or dangerous, follows certain rules. They do things for reasons that make sense to them, even if we don't understand those reasons at first. The other aliens around the table looked at each other. Some of them seemed to think Jake was being foolish. Others seemed curious about what the human might know that they did not. Admiral Kethvar changed the picture again. Now it showed the creature's territory. The Kepler Nebula was a beautiful place with swirling clouds of gas and dust in every color imaginable. Stars were being born there, and the whole area glowed with soft light. In the middle of it all were the ruins that the creature guarded so carefully. The ruins are clearly important, the Admiral said. Our scientists believe they might contain technology or knowledge from a race that lived long before any of us reached the stars. But we cannot get close enough to study them properly. Jake looked at the ruins in the picture. They were made of some kind of white stone that seemed to glow with its own light. The buildings were tall and graceful with curves and arches that no modern architect could copy. They looked peaceful and beautiful, which made the deadly creature guarding them seem even more strange. Has anyone tried approaching without weapons? Jake asked. Every ship that goes near that place gets attacked, General Vorthak said. It does not matter if they have weapons or not. But were they military ships? Jake pressed. Did they look threatening? Admiral Kethvar thought about this. Well, yes. Most of the ships were from our various space forces. Even our science ships are built to military standards. Jake nodded. This was starting to make sense to him. When he was young, his family had a dog that would bark and snap at anyone wearing a uniform. The dog had been hurt by a man in uniform once and never forgot it. Maybe this creature had learned to fear military ships for similar reasons. I want to volunteer for one more mission, Jake said. Let me take a small ship with a small crew. No weapons, no military markings. Just a simple approach to see if the creature reacts differently. The room went quiet. Everyone stared at the human who wanted to face the most dangerous creature in the galaxy, with nothing but hope and good intentions. Commander Morrison, Admiral Kethvar said slowly, this creature has killed some of the bravest and most skilled beings in the galaxy. What makes you think you can succeed where they all failed? Jake was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his grandfather's old ranch and all the animals he had learned to understand over the years. He thought about the wild horses that no one else could get near, and the angry bulls that became gentle when treated with respect instead of force. I don't know if I can succeed, he said finally, but I know that sometimes the answer is not about being stronger or smarter than the animal you're dealing with. Sometimes it's about understanding what the animal really wants and showing it that you're not a threat. The aliens around the table talked among themselves in their various languages. Finally, Admiral Kethvar raised his hand for silence. The Galactic Defense Council has agreed to one final attempt, he announced. Commander Morrison, you will be given a ship and permission to approach the creature as you see fit, but this is absolutely the last mission we will send. If you fail, we will have no choice but to destroy the creature with our most powerful weapons. Jake nodded. He understood the weight of what he was taking on. The lives of his crew would be in his hands and possibly the life of the creature as well. But something deep inside told him that this beast was not the monster everyone thought it was. There was more to this story, and he was determined to find out what it was. 3 days after the meeting in the war room, Jake Morrison stood on the loading dock of the space station. In front of him was his new ship, the Liberty's Dawn. It was not a big ship or a fancy one. It looked more like a cargo hauler than a military vessel. The hull was painted white and gray with no weapons showing on the outside. This was exactly what Jake had wanted. The ship was about the size of a large house back on Earth. It had room for a crew of 6 people and enough supplies to last for 2 weeks in space. The engines were quiet and the shields were basic. Everything about the Liberty's Dawn was designed to look peaceful and harmless. Jake walked around the ship one more time, checking every detail. He had learned long ago that small things could make the difference between life and death in space. The ship needed to work perfectly when they reached the creature's territory. There would be no second chances. She's not much to look at, but she'll get us there safely, said a voice behind him. Jake turned to see his old friend Ben Carter, walking up with 2 cups of coffee. Ben had been Jake's roommate at the Space Academy 20 years ago. They had served together on 3 different ships, and Ben had saved Jake's life more than once. Ben was shorter than Jake, with red hair and green eyes. He had freckles on his face that made him look younger than his 40 years. Ben was one of the best pilots in the Space Force. He could fly anything that had engines and wings. More importantly, Jake trusted him completely. "Thanks for volunteering for this mission," Jake said as he took the coffee. "I know it's probably suicide." "Probably," Ben agreed with a grin. "But it beats sitting behind a desk filling out reports. Besides, someone needs to keep you from doing anything too crazy out there." They walked together toward the ship's loading ramp. Jake had spent the last 3 days putting together his crew. He needed people who were smart and brave, but also people who could think differently than most military officers. This mission would not be won with weapons or force. The first person to join them was Dr. Lisa Hayes. She was a xenobiologist, which meant she studied alien life forms. Lisa was 35 years old with long black hair and dark eyes. She had studied creatures from all over the galaxy and understood animal behavior better than anyone Jake knew. Lisa was already on board the ship, setting up her equipment in what used to be the cargo bay. She had brought scanners and computers that could analyze any living thing they might encounter. Her most important tool was a language computer that could try to translate alien communications. "How are the preparations going?" Jake asked as he found Lisa working with a pile of electronic equipment. "Almost finished," Lisa replied without looking up from her work. "I've programmed the computer with every known form of animal communication in the galaxy. If this creature is trying to talk to us, we should be able to figure out what it's saying." Jake nodded. "What's your professional opinion about this creature?" Lisa stopped working and looked at him seriously. "Based on the videos and reports, this creature is highly intelligent. Its attack patterns are too complex for a simple animal. It's making decisions and planning its moves. The question is whether that intelligence can be reached through communication." The second crew member was Tony Rodriguez, a young engineer who specialized in ship systems. Tony was only 26 years old, but he knew more about how spaceships worked than men twice his age. He had dark hair and brown eyes and came from a family of mechanics on Mars. Tony could fix anything that broke and keep their ship running no matter what happened. Tony was in the engine room making sure everything was working perfectly. Jake found him with his head inside an access panel, tools scattered around his feet. "How are we looking, Tony?" Jake asked. "All systems are running smooth, Commander," Tony said as he pulled his head out of the panel. "I've made some modifications to make us even less threatening. Our engine signature will be very quiet and our power output looks like a civilian ship." "Good thinking," Jake said. "We want to look as harmless as possible." The most unusual member of their crew was not supposed to be there at all. Amy Johnson was Jake's 8-year-old niece, and she was aboard the ship because there had been nowhere else for her to go. Amy's parents had been killed in a transport accident 2 weeks ago. Her mother was Jake's sister, and her father had been a scientist studying ancient alien ruins. Amy had no other family except Jake, and the mission had been approved too quickly for him to arrange proper care for her. Amy was small for her age, with blonde hair and blue eyes like her uncle. She was a smart girl who loved animals and had a way of understanding them that amazed adults. Back on Earth, she had lived on her grandparents' farm where she helped take care of horses, dogs, and cattle. Jake found Amy in the ship's small kitchen area, sitting at the table with a coloring book. She looked up at him with eyes that were still sad from losing her parents, but she managed a small smile. "Are we really going to see the big space monster, Uncle Jake?" she asked. Jake sat down next to her and put his arm around her shoulders. "We're going to try to meet a very large creature that lives far away from here. But Amy, this creature might be dangerous. You'll need to stay in the safe parts of the ship when we get there." Amy nodded seriously. "Is it really a monster, or is it just scared like the wild horses at Grandpa's farm?" Jake was surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" "Well, Grandpa always said that horses only bite and kick when they're scared or hurt. He said that if you're patient and gentle, even the wildest horse will let you get close to it eventually." Jake thought about this. You might be right, Amy. Maybe this creature is just scared and doesn't understand that we don't want to hurt it. The last member of their crew was Sergeant Mike Davis, a soldier who would handle security and communications. Mike was a big man, with short brown hair and serious eyes. He had fought in several space wars and knew how to handle himself in dangerous situations. But Jake had chosen him because Mike was also calm and level-headed. He would not panic or start shooting unless there was no other choice. Mike was on the bridge checking the communication equipment when Jake and Amy found him. The bridge was the control center of the ship with large windows that looked out into space. It had chairs for the pilot and navigator and screens that showed everything happening around the ship. All communication systems are working perfectly, Commander, Mike reported. We can send and receive messages across the entire galaxy if needed. Good, Jake said. But remember, this mission is about communication, not fighting. We're going to try talking to this creature before anyone else tries to destroy it. Mike nodded. Understood, sir, but I'll be ready for anything that might happen. With the crew assembled and the ship ready, Jake called them all together in the main cabin for a final briefing. The cabin was small but comfortable with chairs for everyone and a table in the middle. Through the windows they could see other ships coming and going from the space station. Tomorrow morning we'll leave for the Kepler Nebula, Jake began. Our mission is to make peaceful contact with the creature known as the Shadow Maw. We believe this creature might be trying to communicate rather than simply attacking for no reason. Lisa leaned forward in her chair. What's our approach plan? We'll enter the nebula slowly and quietly, Jake explained. No sudden movements, no aggressive actions. We want to show this creature that we're not a threat. Ben looked concerned. Jake, what if it attacks us anyway? Then we retreat immediately, Jake said. Our ship is fast enough to outrun the creature if we need to escape, but I don't think it will attack if we approach peacefully. Amy raised her small hand. Uncle Jake, can I watch when we meet the creature? Jake looked at his niece thoughtfully. Maybe, Amy, but only if it's completely safe. Tony asked about the technical aspects of the mission. What if our equipment breaks down in the nebula? I've prepared backup systems for everything important, Jake replied. And Tony, your job is to keep us running no matter what happens. Mike wanted to know about emergency procedures. What if we need to call for help? The nearest military ships are 3 days away, Jake said. If something goes wrong, we'll be on our own until help can arrive. The crew spent the next hour going over every detail of the mission. They studied maps of the nebula and pictures of the ancient ruins that the creature was guarding. They reviewed the communication protocols and emergency procedures. Everyone understood that this was probably the most dangerous mission any of them had ever attempted. That night, as the crew prepared for sleep, Jake stood alone on the bridge looking out at the stars. Tomorrow they would begin a journey that would either make history or end their lives. He thought about his grandfather's words about understanding animals and hoped that the same wisdom would work with a creature from the stars. Amy came to find him before going to bed. She stood next to him at the big window and looked out at the darkness of space. Uncle Jake, she said quietly, I think the creature is lonely. What makes you say that? Jake asked. Well, if it's the only one of its kind guarding those old buildings, it must get very lonely. Maybe it attacks ships because it wants attention, but it doesn't know how to ask for friends nicely. Jake looked down at his niece with amazement. Sometimes children could see things that adults missed completely. The Liberty's Dawn flew through space for 3 days before reaching the edge of the Kepler Nebula. Jake stood on the bridge watching the swirling clouds of gas and dust grow larger through the main window. The nebula was beautiful with colors he had never seen before. Purple and gold clouds twisted together like paint mixed in water. New stars were being born inside the nebula, and their light made everything glow. It's so pretty, Amy said as she pressed her face against the window. She had been excited about the trip since they left the space station. For her, this was an adventure to see something amazing. She did not fully understand how dangerous it might be. Beginning final approach to the creature's territory, Ben announced from the pilot's seat. His hands moved over the controls with practiced skill. All systems are running quiet and smooth. Dr. Lisa Hayes was busy at her science station. Her screens showed readings from all the sensors on the ship. "I'm detecting some very strange energy patterns," she said. "There's definitely something alive in there, and it's big." Tony Rodriguez checked his engineering displays. "Ship is running perfectly, Commander. We're putting out minimal energy signatures. To any scanners, we should look like a small civilian. Transport." Jake nodded and activated the ship's communication system. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Liberty's Dawn to any military ships in the area. We are beginning our approach to the Shadow Maw. Maintain your distance and do not interfere unless we specifically request help." Several voices answered from ships hidden throughout the nebula. The military was watching, ready to attack if the creature destroyed Jake's ship. But they had promised to stay back and let him try his peaceful approach first. As they flew deeper into the nebula, the first signs of previous battles appeared. Pieces of destroyed ships floated in the colorful gas clouds. Some were just chunks of twisted metal, but others were complete ships that had been disabled and abandoned. The crews had escaped but left their vessels behind. "Look at all those ships," Amy said sadly. "Did the creature break all of them?" "The creature defended itself when it felt threatened," Jake explained carefully. "Remember, it doesn't know that some of the ships came in peace. All it saw were big military vessels. That looked dangerous." Ben piloted the ship carefully around the floating wreckage. Some of the destroyed ships were huge, much larger than the Liberty's Dawn. It was clear that size and weapons had not helped them against the creature they were going to meet. "Energy readings are getting stronger," Lisa reported. "Whatever is in there is very powerful. I'm also detecting some kind of structure near the center of the nebula. It might be the ruins that the creature is guarding." Through the swirling clouds ahead, they began to see something that made them all go quiet. Ancient buildings rose from a large asteroid like white towers reaching toward the stars. The buildings were tall and graceful with curved walls that seemed to glow with their own light. They were clearly very old but still beautiful. "Those must be the ruins," Jake said. "They're incredible." "They're so pretty," Amy whispered. "Like castles in a fairy tale." But before they could study the ruins more closely, something else appeared. At first, it looked like another piece of the nebula moving in the distance. Then it came closer, and they realized they were seeing the creature itself. The Shadow Maw was even more magnificent and terrifying than the pictures had shown. It was as long as 3 large ships put together and taller than most buildings. Its body seemed to be made of living crystal that reflected the nebula's light in rainbow patterns. Energy flowed under its skin like liquid fire. The creature's head was enormous with eyes that burned like small suns. When it opened its mouth, they could see rows of teeth that looked like they were made of the same crystal as its body. Its neck was long and graceful, and it moved through space as easily as a fish moves through water. "My God," Dr. Hayes breathed. "It's beautiful." The creature circled their small ship slowly. It stayed about 500 meters away, close enough that they could see every detail of its incredible body, but far enough that they did not feel immediately threatened. Its movements were smooth and careful, like it was studying them as much as they were studying it. "It's not attacking," Sergeant Davis observed. He had his hand near the emergency controls but was trying to stay calm. "Energy patterns are very interesting," Lisa said as she watched her instruments. "The creature is scanning us, but not in an aggressive way. It's more like curiosity." Jake felt his heart beating fast but tried to keep his voice steady. "Everyone stay calm and move slowly. We don't want to startle it." The creature completed its circle around their ship and came to a stop directly in front of the bridge windows. Its massive head was now only a few meters from the transparent metal that protected them. The alien eyes, each one larger than Amy's entire body, seemed to look right into the ship. "Uncle Jake," Amy said in a small voice. "It's looking at me." Jake turned to see that Amy had moved closer to the main window. The creature had indeed focused its attention on the small human child. Its head tilted slightly to one side like a dog that hears an interesting sound. "Amy, step back slowly," Jake said softly. But Amy did not step back. Instead, she raised her small hand and waved at the creature through the window. Everyone on the bridge held their breath, waiting to see what would happen. The creature's massive head moved slightly. Then, to everyone's amazement, it lifted one of its smaller appendages and moved it in what looked like a wave back at Amy. Did it just wave at her? Ben asked in disbelief. The energy patterns have changed completely, Lisa reported excitedly. It's not scanning us anymore. The readings look more like communication attempts. Amy smiled and pressed her hand against the window. The creature watched her carefully, then moved its head closer until it was almost touching the other side of the window. Very gently, it pressed one of its appendages against the same spot where Amy's hand was. This is incredible, Jake said. It's trying to make contact with her. For the next several minutes, Amy and the creature played a simple game. When Amy moved her head to the left, the creature moved its massive head to the left. When she nodded, it responded with a slow bow. When she held up 2 fingers, it extended 2 of its smaller appendages. It's copying everything she does, Tony said with wonder in his voice. No, Lisa corrected as she studied her readings. It's not just copying, it's responding. This is actual communication. Jake watched in amazement as his 8-year-old niece carried on a conversation with the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. They were not using words, but they were definitely talking to each other. Amy would make a simple gesture and the creature would respond with its own gesture. Then the creature would initiate a movement and Amy would copy it. Uncle Jake, it's trying to tell me something, Amy said, without taking her eyes off the creature. What do you think it's trying to say? Amy was quiet for a moment, concentrating on the creature's movements. I think it wants to show me something. It keeps looking toward those pretty buildings. Jake looked toward the ancient ruins. Maybe it wants us to understand why it's guarding them. Suddenly, Lisa's instruments began beeping rapidly. Commander, I'm detecting movement from the ruins. There are more energy signatures approaching. Through the swirling gas of the nebula, 3 smaller shapes emerged from behind the ancient buildings. They were clearly the same species as the large creature, but much smaller. The biggest of them was only about the size of a regular spaceship. Babies, Amy said with delight. It has babies. The 3 young creatures approached slowly, staying behind their parent. They moved with the same graceful motions but seemed more curious and less cautious than the adult. Their crystal scales were brighter, and their energy patterns were different. The large one is protecting its offspring, Jake realized. That's why it attacks ships that come too close. It's not being aggressive for no reason. It's being a parent. The adult creature turned its head toward its young ones and made a sound that they could not hear through the vacuum of space, but the ship's sensors picked it up. It was a complex pattern of energy pulses that Lisa's computer tried to translate. The translation is rough, Lisa said, but I think it's telling them that we're safe. It's introducing us to its children. The young creatures came closer, emboldened by their parents' approval. They swam through space around the Liberty's dawn like playful dolphins, their crystal bodies catching and reflecting the nebula's light. One of them came close to the window where Amy was standing and seemed to wave at her with its own small appendage. They're friendly, Amy laughed. They want to play. For the next hour, the crew of the Liberty's dawn watched in wonder as Amy interacted with the alien family. The young creatures were clearly fascinated by the human child, and their parent watched with what could only be described as approval. This changes everything, Jake said quietly. This creature isn't a monster, it's a parent protecting its family. Dr. Hayes was working frantically with her translation equipment. I'm making progress with their communication system. It's incredibly complex, but I think I can figure out some basic concepts. What have you learned so far? Jake asked. Well, they definitely have names for each other. The adult calls itself something that translates roughly to guardian of the sacred place. Over the next 3 days, the Liberty's dawn stayed near the ancient ruins, while Dr. Lisa Hayes worked to understand the creature's language. What she discovered amazed everyone on the ship. The energy patterns that the creatures used to talk were more complex than any language the galaxy had ever seen. They're not just intelligent, Lisa explained to Jake during one of their daily meetings. They're incredibly smart. Their language has thousands of different meanings depending on how the energy pulses are arranged. It's like they can say a whole book's worth of information in just a few seconds. Jake watched through the bridge windows as Amy continued to play with the young creatures. She had taught them simple games like follow the leader and hide and seek. The baby creatures seemed to love these games and would swim around the ship in playful circles. "Have you figured out what they're trying to tell us?" Jake asked. Lisa nodded excitedly. "Yes, and it's incredible. The adult creature has been trying to communicate with every ship that came here. She wasn't attacking because she was mean. She was trying to tell them something important. But when they didn't understand, she thought they were threats to her children." "What was she trying to say?" "That's the amazing part," Lisa continued. "She's been asking for help. She and her children are the last of their kind in this part of the galaxy. They're dying out and she doesn't know what to do about it." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The last of their kind? From what I can understand, her people are called the Kethamor. It means something like guardians of memory in their language. They were brought here thousands of years ago by another race to protect these ruins. Lisa showed Jake her translation of the creature's messages on her computer screen. The words were strange, but the meaning was clear. The Kethamor had been guardians for so long that they had forgotten where they originally came from. They only knew their duty to protect the ancient knowledge in the ruins. "The race that brought them here died out long ago," Lisa explained. "They were called the Architect Builders. The ruins contain all the history and knowledge of their civilization. The Kethamor have been protecting this information for thousands of years, but now they're alone and slowly dying." Jake looked out at the adult creature who was gently watching her children play with Amy. The creature's massive size and frightening appearance now seemed different to him. Instead of a monster, he saw a mother who was worried about her children's future. "How many of them are left?" Jake asked. "Just these 4. The adult is the last of her generation. Her children are the youngest Kethamor in the universe. When they die, their entire species will be gone forever." The weight of this knowledge settled on Jake's shoulders. They had come here expecting to face a dangerous beast, but instead they had found a dying race that needed help. The creature that the galaxy feared was actually trying to save her species and protect ancient knowledge at the same time. "What does she want from us?" Jake asked. Lisa checked her notes. "She wants to share the knowledge in the ruins with other races who will promise to protect it. But more importantly, she wants to find a safe place for her children to live. She's afraid that when she dies, they won't be able to protect themselves." Jake thought about this for a long time. The Kethamor had been alone for so long that they didn't know there were good people in the galaxy who would help them. Every ship that came to their territory looked like a military threat, so they never had a chance to explain their situation. "Can we communicate with her directly?" Jake asked. "I think so. I've programmed the computer to translate our words into their energy language. It's not perfect, but she should be able to understand basic concepts." Jake activated the ship's communication system. "Guardian of the Sacred Place, this is Commander Jake Morrison. Can you understand my words?" There was a moment of silence, then energy patterns flowed from the adult creature. Lisa's computer translated the response. "Small ones who came in. Peace, I hear your voice patterns. You speak the ancient greeting correctly. Are you those who can be trusted with the sacred memory?" Jake felt his heart beating faster. This was the first real conversation between humans and the Kethamor. "We want to understand your situation and help if we can. Will you tell us about the sacred memory you protect?" The creature's response was long and complex. Lisa's computer worked to translate it, and slowly the words appeared on the screen. The adult creature was telling them the story of her people and their long duty as guardians. Thousands of years ago, the Architect Builders had been a great race that built beautiful cities throughout the galaxy. They had knowledge of science and art that was far beyond what any current civilization possessed. But they had known that their time was ending, and they wanted to preserve their knowledge for future generations. The Architect Builders had chosen the Kethamor to be the guardians of their most important knowledge. The Kethamor were brought from their home world to this nebula, where the most sacred ruins had been built. They were given the duty to protect the knowledge until other worthy races could be found to continue the guardianship. But the Architect Builders died before they could return for us. the creature explained through the translator. We have waited here for thousands of years, protecting the sacred memory and raising our young. But our numbers grow smaller with each generation. Soon there will be no more HFY to continue the guardianship. Jake was amazed by the story. Guardian, what knowledge is so important that your people have given their lives to protect it? The answer came back immediately. The knowledge of how to build worlds where all life can flourish together, the secrets of healing planets that have been damaged by war, the wisdom of creating peace between different races. All this and more waits in the sacred memory. Lisa looked up from her computer with wide eyes. Jake, if this is true, the ruins contain knowledge that could solve most of the galaxy's problems. No wonder she's been so protective of it. Jake thought about all the wars and conflicts that raged throughout the galaxy. Different races fought over resources and territory while planets died from pollution and neglect. The knowledge that the HFY protected could change everything. Guardian, Jake said carefully, what would you need from us to share this knowledge? The creature's response was immediate and clear. Promise that the sacred memory will be protected and honored. Promise that the knowledge will be used to help all life, not to create weapons or gain power over others. And promise that my children will have a safe place to live when I am gone. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Ben nodded encouragingly. Lisa was already taking notes. Tony gave him a thumbs up. Sergeant Davis looked serious but supportive. Amy was pressed against the window, still playing with the young creatures who seemed to trust her completely. We promise, Jake said. The human government and our allies will protect the sacred memory and use the knowledge wisely. And we will find a safe home for your children where they can live and grow. The creature's energy patterns changed to what Lisa's computer translated as joy and relief. For the first time in 1,000 years, hope returns to the HFY. You speak with the voice of truth, small ones. I will begin to share the sacred memory with you. But before the creature could begin transmitting the ancient knowledge, Sergeant Davis's communication equipment began beeping urgently. Commander, we have a problem. Military ships are approaching our position. It looks like a full battle fleet. Jake's heart sank as he looked at the sensor readings. At least 20 military ships were coming toward them at high speed. Someone had decided that the peaceful mission was taking too long and had sent a fleet to destroy the creature by force. Guardian, Jake said urgently, dangerous ships are coming. They want to hurt you and your children. You must protect yourselves. The creature's response was filled with sadness. I cannot fight so many while protecting my young ones. If the Deathbringers have come, then the sacred memory will be lost forever. Amy looked up at Jake with tears in her eyes. Uncle Jake, we can't let them hurt our new friends. Jake activated the emergency communication channel. This is Commander Morrison to the approaching fleet. Do not attack. We have established peaceful contact with the creatures. They are not hostile. The response came from General Vextar, the Corthan military commander. Commander Morrison, you have exceeded your mission time limit. We are here to eliminate the threat permanently. Move your ship to a safe distance immediately. General, this creature is not a threat. It's a guardian protecting ancient knowledge that could benefit the entire galaxy. If you attack, you'll be destroying something precious beyond measure. The creature has killed thousands of our people, General, Vextar replied coldly. It must be destroyed. You have 5 minutes to clear the area. Jake looked at the adult creature, who was now moving to position herself between her children and the approaching fleet. Even knowing she faced impossible odds, she would fight to protect her young ones until the end. Amy tugged on Jake's sleeve. Uncle Jake, she's scared, just like the wild horses at Grandpa's farm when the thunderstorms came. Jake knelt down beside his niece. Amy, this is different. These ships have weapons that could hurt the creatures badly. The military fleet moved closer to the ancient ruins where the HFY family waited. 20 warships approached in attack formation with their weapons charging up for battle. The ships were huge and dangerous, built for destroying things rather than protecting them. General Vexitar's voice came through the communication system again. Commander Morrison, you have 2 minutes to move your ship to safety. After that, we will open fire on the creature. Jake watched as the guardian of the sacred place positioned herself between the approaching fleet and her 3 children. The right. Young Kethamore had stopped playing and were now hiding behind their mother, sensing the danger that was coming toward them. "General, please listen to me," Jake said desperately. "This creature is not our enemy. She's been trying to communicate with us for years. She has knowledge that could help the entire galaxy." "The time for talk is over," General Vextar replied. "The creature has killed too many of our people. It must be destroyed." Amy pressed herself against the bridge window, watching as her new friends prepared for a battle they could not win. The adult creature was huge and powerful, but she was only one against 20 military ships. More importantly, she had to protect her children while fighting. "Uncle Jake," Amy said quietly. She looked so scared and sad. Jake knelt down beside his niece. "I know, sweetheart. We're trying to help, but those ships won't listen to us." Amy looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "Can I try talking to her again? Maybe if she knows we're really her friends, she won't be so scared." Jake looked at the countdown timer on his screen. They had less than a minute before the military ships would start shooting. Dr. Hayes was frantically trying to contact the fleet commanders while Sergeant Davis monitored emergency channels. Ben was preparing to move their ship to safety if the shooting started. Dr. Hayes opened the communication channel again, Jake said. Lisa looked confused. "Jake, what can Amy say that will make a difference now?" "I don't know," Jake admitted. "But she's been the only one who could really connect with these creatures. Maybe she can help them understand that not all of us are enemies." Amy stepped up to the communication panel. Through the window, she could see the Guardian looking back at her. The massive creature's eyes seemed to be asking for help that Amy didn't know how to give. "Hello, Guardian," Amy said into the microphone. "I know you're really scared, right? Now, the big ships look mean and dangerous, just like when thunderstorms scared the horses at Grandpa's farm." The creature's energy patterns changed as Lisa's computer translated Amy's words. The Guardian moved slightly closer to their ship, as if seeking comfort from the small human child who had become her friend. Amy continued talking in her gentle voice. "Grandpa always told me that when animals are scared, they need someone to show them everything will be okay. He said scared animals do bad things sometimes, but it's only because they don't understand that there are good people who want to help them." The military ships were now very close. Their weapons were fully charged and ready to fire. General Vextar's voice came over the radio one last time. "Final warning, Commander Morrison. Move your ship immediately." But Amy kept talking to the Guardian, ignoring the danger around them. "I know you've been alone for a really long time, protecting your babies and the pretty buildings. But you don't have to be alone anymore. My uncle and his friends are good people. We want to help you take care of your children." The Guardian's massive head turned toward the approaching military ships, then back to Amy. Her energy patterns showed confusion and fear, but also something else that Lisa's computer translated as hope. Amy took a deep breath and said what was in her heart. "Guardian, I know those ships look scary, but fighting them won't protect your babies. Sometimes the bravest thing an animal can do is trust the people who want to help them." The military ships were now in position to attack. Their weapons were aimed at the Guardian, who floated between them and her children. Everyone expected her to prepare for battle or to attack first like she had done with so many ships before. But Amy wasn't finished talking. She looked directly into the Guardian's burning eyes and spoke with the quiet authority that children sometimes have when they see things more clearly than adults. "Guardian," Amy said softly, "you don't have to fight anymore. You can trust us. Please, sit." The word carried no force behind it, no threat or command. It was simply a request from one friend to another, spoken in the same gentle voice that Amy had used with frightened animals all her life. It was the word that children around the galaxy used when they wanted their pets to calm down and feel safe. The guardian of the sacred place, last adult of her species, protector of ancient knowledge, warrior who had faced down the combined military, might of the galaxy for decades, heard that simple word and understood its meaning. Slowly, gracefully, she folded her massive crystal wings and settled her enormous body into a resting position in space. She kept her burning eyes fixed on Amy's small face, trusting completely in the friendship of a human child. The military fleet stopped moving forward. General Vexitar's shocked voice came over the communication system. What? What just happened? The creature has stopped fighting. The three young Kethamor, seeing their mother's peaceful posture, swam out from their hiding places. They approached the Liberty's Dawn and took positions near their mother, all of them looking toward Amy with what could only be described as gratitude. General Vextar, Jake said, his voice steady despite his amazement. I believe we need to discuss a new approach to this situation. For the next several hours, representatives from the military fleet came aboard the Liberty's Dawn to meet with the Kethamor family. Dr. Hayes acted as translator, while Amy served as the unofficial ambassador between humans and the ancient Guardians. The Guardians shared some of the knowledge from the sacred memory as proof of what the ruins contained. The information was incredible. The architect-builders had developed ways to heal damaged planets, create energy without pollution, and help different species live together in peace. The knowledge could solve many of the galaxy's biggest problems. But more than the ancient knowledge, the military leaders were amazed by what they had witnessed. A human child had succeeded where thousands of trained soldiers and diplomats had failed. She had looked past the frightening appearance of the creature and seen the frightened parent underneath. Amy spent the rest of the day playing with the young Kethamor, while the adults worked out the details of a new agreement. The Guardian would share the ancient knowledge with the Galactic Council, and in return the Kethamor family would be given a protected home where they could live safely. As the sun set on their adventure, Amy stood on the bridge watching her new friends swim through the colorful nebula clouds. The young creatures were playing again, no longer afraid now that they knew they were safe. How did you know what to say to her? Jake asked his niece. Amy thought about this seriously. Well, when Max was a puppy, he used to be scared of everything. Loud noises, strangers, even his own shadow sometimes. But when I told him to sit and stay calm, he knew I was trying to help him feel better. Jake smiled. So you treated the Guardian like a scared puppy? Not exactly, Amy said. I treated her like a friend who needed help feeling safe. Grandpa always said that all creatures, big or small, just want to know that someone cares about them. Looking back at the Guardian, who was now gently watching over her children as they played near the ancient ruins, Jake realized that his 8-year-old niece had taught the galaxy an important lesson. Sometimes the most complex problems had the simplest solutions, and sometimes the word that changed everything was spoken by someone too young to understand why it shouldn't work. 3 months later, the Kepler Nebula had become the galaxy's first interspecies preservation sanctuary. Scientists from dozens of different worlds came to study the ancient knowledge, while the Kethamor family lived safely under the protection of the Galactic Council. Amy received the Young Ambassador Award for her role in establishing peaceful contact with the Kethamor. But she was more excited about the special communication device that let her talk to her crystal friends whenever she wanted. The guardian of the sacred place, now known simply as Mother Crystal to her human friends, became a teacher and advisor to the Galactic Council. Her children grew up learning about dozens of different species and cultures, ensuring that the Kethamor would never be alone again. And in military academies throughout the galaxy, new students learned about the day when a human child succeeded where armies had failed. They studied the importance of understanding over force, of friendship over fear, and of the simple truth that every creature in the universe just wants to feel safe and loved. The most dangerous monster in known space had turned out to be a mother, protecting her children. And all it took to reach her was one word, spoken with trust and compassion, by someone who saw friends where others saw enemies. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what it needed.